I'm doing really good. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's the first time I've been on via Zoom. Normally, you guys treat me right. I get to eat good. Today, I'm just in the studio by myself.
Well, we hope we'll get to see you in person again soon. I want to also mention that you are now a documentarian, and we're going to talk about your new film in just a bit. I hear great things about it. But before we do, the stat that stood out to me over the weekend is neither opponent of the Chiefs nor Mizzou punted last weekend. Your thoughts on the football we watched?
I got to watch the first half of the Missouri-Tennessee game. I don't really know why anybody would have watched the second half of the Missouri-Tennessee game. It seems like there were plenty of better things to do with your Saturday. I'm still fairly optimistic about Missouri in a really, really big picture sense. So there were 7 Barry Odom recruits on the field on Saturday to 4 Eli Drinkwitz recruits. This season to me is really about one thing. Are they going to keep their recruiting class intact? So come November, when it's signing day, when it's time to lock all of these kids in, if Eli keeps them on the boat, then I think they're in a really good position. I think all of us would agree that Missouri just simply doesn't have enough talent, especially up front. And if you're going to compete at the SEC at the level that Missouri wants to compete at, you got to be stronger on the defensive line. You got to be stronger at linebacker. I don't really think they're any of those two things right now. But I think the hope as a Missouri fan is that help is on the way, that more talent is going to be coming, and that Eli can get it together. I said this on the show yesterday regarding the Chiefs. I think there's 3 groups of Chiefs fans right now. I think there is a group of Chiefs fans that acknowledges something's wrong with the defense, but are optimistic they're going to turn it around. I think there's a group of people that are oblivious to the defense and think that Mahomes can just fix every problem that they have. And then I think there's a group of people that have just simply given up on the defense. I'm probably in the first group. I think this season can go one of 2 ways. I think it can be like 2018, or I think it can be like 2019. In 2019, they got off to a rough start and they figured it out, and obviously they won the Super Bowl. In 2018, the only reason they didn't win the Super Bowl is they just never got the problems fixed on defense. So we'll see how this year plays itself out. For the Chiefs, there's hope defensively. There ain't no hope for Missouri's defense. They're just bad.
Let's talk a little bit more about Mizzou. The Tigers now 2-2. They take on North Texas this Saturday. That's a 3:00 kickoff on SEC Network. I was doing a little scouting on North Texas, and lo and behold, they have a running back who's 3rd in the nation in FBS in rushing. That scares the heck out of me, the way the defense has been played.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that he's going to run for a lot of yards against Mizzou, because everybody would run for a lot of yards against Missouri at this point. Like, I don't have much hope and optimism when it comes to the defense. Like, maybe in this Tiger Club meeting, I'm supposed to share hope and optimism, but I mean, we just saw Tennessee run for almost 500 yards against Missouri and 8 yards a carry on 50 carries against Mizzou. Like, they haven't shown that they can stop really any team. SEMO ran the ball effectively against them. So if you have 11 players on offense, you can run the ball against Missouri.
The Gabe DeArmond of Power Mizzou had an interesting stat in his column this week. He said if Mizzou did not give up a yard on Saturday against North Texas on the ground, and every other team in the country played to his average, Mizzou would move from last in the nation in rushing defense to next to the last in rushing defense. It's not even close right now on the defensive side.
No, it's not close. And I was actually talking to Gabe about this over the weekend. We were kind of going back and forth. And I think, well, we all know Missouri's defense is bad. It is hard to believe that they're this bad. That I do think that Saturday went so poorly for Mizzou that somebody had to answer for it, and that was the defensive line coach. Are they going to have another performance between now and the end of the season where the defensive coordinator has to answer for it? And I think we all know how social media works, how the time works. Like, if your defense is going to be as bad as Missouri's is, it's going to be hard to get the public sentiment on your favor for you to come back for a second season as a defensive coordinator. So at some point, their defense needs to show a sizable step forward than they've shown up so far. Missouri has the worst defense in D1 football, like the worst, not just worse in the SEC. If you look at the numbers, they are the worst defense in Division I football, which just doesn't make any sense.
What we went into the season thinking, 7-5, 8-4. What do you think now? What is a realistic expectation?
I think it's hard to pick them to make a bowl game at this point, to be completely honest with you. it really comes down to their ability to get stops. And I think we saw it in the game against Boston College. Like, your offense needs to play nearly flawlessly in order to overcome the defense. I actually thought their offense was good, and I imagine at some point we'll talk about Connor Bazelak, which I don't really seem to have the problem that other Missouri fans have with them. I mean, I think we all see sort of what his limitations are, but in terms of the problems that I think Missouri has, I don't think he's that high up on the list. I think their offense has to play at a near perfect level in order to beat good teams, and that's just not realistic or feasible.
Let's talk a little about Connor. I think he's been pretty good. He's had some trouble on the deep throws, but there's probably a lot of pressure when you know you got a scorer every time you got the ball, and I think that's got to hurt his performance a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple of different things. Like, I always say this in the NFL, and I think it applies to college too. Either you have the guy at quarterback. So like Kansas City, for example, they have the guy. They have Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league. Seattle, they have the guy. Or you get a good quarterback like Ryan Tannehill, and then you put the right parts around him that you can elevate the play of him, or Jimmy Garoppolo a couple of years ago. Outside of Tyler Beatty, I don't really know how many other legitimate weapons that you can count on for Missouri's. And if you're going to have so much focus on one offensive player, it's just kind of hard to expand. So I think some of Connor's limitations are just based on the parts that are surrounding him. But I also think like he has some limitations too, that I don't know if he's a guy that's going to go out there and make a lot of plays for you. But I also think if you put him in a great situation, he's also not going to lose a lot of games for you either. But I just think at where they are in their development as a program and sort of getting the talent to where I think it needs to be in the SEC and where it was when they first entered the SEC, I just think they're probably 2 years away from being able to say that they're at that level.
We're talking to Carrington Harrison of 610 Sports. He's the host of The Drive from 2 to 6, and you follow him on Twitter at C.Harrison. That's C-D-O-T Harrison. C. Let's move to the Chiefs. I listened to your interview yesterday with Mitch Holtis on the podcast, and it was interesting. I had a lot of the same thoughts you did. It looks like at times the Chiefs defense is out of position, which is kind of confusing or disappointing because this is sort of a veteran crew. And you touched on that with Mitch.
Yeah, I would say the two things that maybe surprised me most, I think it's three things. I'll throw another thing in there, is up front with their defensive line. They spend a lot on the defensive line. Chris Jones makes $100 million. Frank Clark makes $100 million. Jaron Reed signed a 1-year, $8 million deal. Like, they've spent a lot of resources on their defensive line, and they haven't really gotten a lot in return for it. I think that's actually their biggest problem. I think if they were better up front, it would solve basically every other issue that they have on the defense. It would make Daniel Sorensen better. It wouldn't put him in so many situations where it's open field stuff. I think it would make their cornerback situation a whole lot better. I think a lot of their issue starts up front. I'm surprised at how slow the Chiefs defense are. Like, I thought the Eagles did a really good job of kind of getting them in space and using the flats and kind of throwing the open and just guessing that one-on-one Kansas City either wasn't fast enough or couldn't tackle one-on-one scenarios. Jalen Hurts only had 2 games in college in which he threw for more yards than he threw on Sunday against Kansas City, and one of those was against Texas Tech, which we know their defense stinks. The other thing is what you said, which was the miscommunication. For a defense that's largely been the same now for 3 years under the same defensive coordinator, I'm surprised how many pre-snap miscommunications that they have and how frequently they don't all appear to be on the same page.
Yeah, I was really surprised at that. What do you hear? I saw yesterday Andy Reid said Willie Gay Jr. might play this week. What have you heard, and what about Charvarius Ward?
I haven't heard anything, honestly, that's outside of what Andy said yesterday. So typically today's kind of the off day, and then tomorrow Andy and Mahomes talks again. And then Thursday is the coordinators. They speak. And then Friday, Andy talks, but it's real quick. I think it'll be interesting to see who practices and who doesn't practice. Like last week, I thought that Frank Clark was going to practice or play. He practiced every day last week and then wasn't able to give it a go. Charvarius Ward was in the exact same boat. The only person that didn't practice last week was Rashad Fenton. So I think we'll get a much clearer picture, I would say, by Thursday on whether or not those guys are going to play.
Big game coming up on Sunday night against the Bills. The Chiefs currently rank number 2 in offense and yardage, and The Bills rank number 6. The two teams are tied in scoring. Here's the difference. The Chiefs are number 31 in defense, and the Bills are number 1. This is a big game. The Bills' opposition now, season to date, is 5-11. The Chiefs is 10-6. So, and the Bills have played against 3 backup quarterbacks, but they have been very impressive since that opening day loss to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really big perception game, really, for both teams. So Mahomes spoke on Sunday, and he said it yesterday on the show that, we haven't fully dug ourselves out of the hole yet. The Chiefs are 60 minutes away from digging themselves out of the hole. If you come out of that stretch 3-2, it's not ideal. It's not what we thought they were going to be, but you got by really the hardest part of your schedule, and it really starts to open up. After this week, they got a game against Washington, a game against Tennessee, and a game against the Giants. It's not unbelievable to think that by the time they play the Packers, they're 6-2, and we just feel very different about Kansas City. I also think from Buffalo's side, from, I guess, their national perception, if Buffalo wins and they find themselves basically 3 games up on Kansas City with the tiebreaker, it's going to be really hard for Kansas City to be the home team for the AFC Championship game. Like we've kind of had it these last couple of years where going to the Super Bowl goes through Kansas City, and you got to go to Arrowhead in January to beat Patrick Mahomes to go to the Super Bowl. There's not a lot of teams I would pick in that scenario. If the Chiefs lose on Sunday, their margin for error is just really going to shrink, and they're going to have to get really hot really fast. And you still got to go on the road to the Chargers, who I think have proven that they're a good team. You still got to go on the road to Vegas. You still got to go on the road to Denver. I know they weren't super impressive, but we kind of know those divisional road matchups, how sometimes those can be difficult, even though the Chiefs have kind of handled the Broncos the last couple of years. So I think it's a really big talking point game on Sunday for Kansas City and Buffalo. And Buffalo have to sort of prove to the rest of us that they're good. To what you said, they played Washington, smoked them. They played the Dolphins. I don't know what to make of the Dolphins. One week I think they're good. The next week they're terrible. They're not really. And Houston, I actually picked Buffalo in Survivor last week. Houston's quarterback, that Davis Mills kid, put together one of the worst performances I've ever seen. He looked like Nathan Peterman at quarterback out there. So Buffalo has a lot to prove over the next couple of weeks.
We're talking to Carrington Harrison of 610 Sports. If you'd like to ask him a question, please use the chat feature at the bottom of the screen. And again, make sure you're muted. I cannot be seen today for technical reasons, so I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. Hey, C-Dot, back to the Chiefs. On offense, I saw some criticism of Lucas Niang at the tackle. Do you expect them to stick with him, or Mike Rimmer's coming in?
No, I think they're going to stick with it. I think we knew coming into the season that it was going to kind of ebb and flow with the offensive line. And I always kind of looked at Lucas Niang as, I guess, the one question mark, which sounds kind of odd to say, given that they start a rookie at center and a rookie at right guard. But I thought Lucas Niang was always kind of the coin flip guy. We're talking about a 3rd-round tackle who didn't play last year, who opted out of COVID. So I don't think it's been bad enough that's raised the alarm for them to make a switch. I think they're just normal growing pains that you got to expect for any first-year non-high draft pick.
We do tend to forget that they are starting 3 rookies on the offensive line and 2 new guys who weren't with the team last year. I expect the offensive line to get a lot better, and they're still tied for second in the league in scoring. So, and the turnovers really weren't the offensive line's fault. The game against the Ravens, there was penetration on Clyde's fumble. What do you think on the offensive line?
Yeah, we talked about this a lot during the season because it was just such a focus for them. So at least coming into the year, 7 teams were starting a rookie on the offensive line. The Chiefs were the only team that were starting multiple rookies on the offensive line. So what they were doing was fairly unique, especially for a team that is expected to compete to win the Super Bowl the way that the Chiefs have. I think a lot of their turnovers, at least when it comes to the interceptions, have been Mahomes doing a lot. Like the interception he had against Philadelphia, I don't think he makes that throw last season, but I do think there's a pressure for the offense. If we don't score on this drive and we got to hand things back over to the defense, who knows what's going to happen, that I think he's made a couple of very uncharacteristic throws so far this year that I don't really think Mahomes has made. I'm really curious about the offensive line and how they perform up against Buffalo this week, because you gave some stats about Buffalo. The Chargers are dead last in the NFL against the run. Philadelphia is 27th against the run. Buffalo 7th against the run. So I think the Chiefs have run the ball really effectively the last 2 weeks with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's one thing to do it against two bad defenses. You're going up against a pretty good defense. Now, I think the numbers are inflated for Buffalo because of the opponents, but you're going up against one of the top 10 defenses in the league. Can you establish the run against them? Can you find a way to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire open in space? Can you keep up this offensive output? Because going into the game, you have to expect Buffalo is going to be able to move the ball. They're going to be able to score, and they're going to be able to put up points against you, and you just got to be able to match it.
Do we see Josh Gordon this week?
I do think Josh Gordon's going to play. We're actually going to talk about this later on the show today. They haven't thrown the ball to Mecole Hardman past the line of scrimmage the last 2 weeks. They only use them for screen plays and jet sweeps. That's not what your number 2 receiver can do. That's what your like 3rd or 4th receiver can do. Demarcus Robinson didn't get a target last week, and Byron Pringle only had 38 yards receiving. Like, you make this move for Josh Gordon, and just the way that they're talking about Gordon and how he looks and physically and all of that kind of stuff, I personally would be surprised if Gordon wasn't active on Sunday. I don't know how big of a role he's going to have, just given he just got here and his understanding of the offense, but I'd be really surprised if he was inactive. And I think they're going to try to get him involved on Sunday, because I don't really know how many more options they have when it comes to pass catching.
Before we move to talk about your documentary, I do want to get your thoughts on the Royals' just completed season. I thought it was a little disappointing after the quick start they got off, but when you look back, they were about what they were predicted to be, and I think there is hope for the future. And, of course, what a year for Sal Perez.
Yeah, I really can't add anything to what you just said. I mean, I think they kind of got our expectations up at the very beginning of the season, and then they realized, like they typically do in May and June, we're the Royals. And then they went through that little bit of a stretch. But you're right. If you like really look back at the season, it's like, well, they did exactly what I thought they were going to do. They won 75 games and they developed some of the young players. I think what really buried this team, at least through the first, let's say 75 games, they got nothing from Jorge Soler. They got nothing from Hunter Dozier. They got nothing from Adalberto Mondesi. That this just isn't a team, and not many teams are put together where they can get very little support or very little contribution from 3 of their most important players the first part of the season. So I think, like most things, they weren't as good as they were the first 30 games. They weren't as bad, obviously, as we kind of saw over the course of the season, the next 30 games. And I think that next year is about developing the pitching. I think from a position player standpoint, they're in a decent shape, but you need Mondesi to take a step forward, and we expect Bobby Witt Jr. to start next year. But they got to find 2 to 4 starting pitchers moving forward. And if that happens, I don't see why they can't compete for 500 next year.
All right. I want to talk about you for a minute. You've had an interesting career path, and I saw in your bio you've been 20 years now in sports broadcasting. I said, how many years at 610 Sports now?
Not 20. I am only 33. So you're aging me.
Something about 20 years. I must have misread that. So
yeah, no, you're aging me a little bit. Yeah. So
no,
it's all good. I actually just had my 10-year anniversary last year in December, so it'll be 11 coming up here in a couple months.
Now, didn't you start broadcasting some though when you were still in high school in Kansas City?
I think Mark's gone.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Mark, I can hear you. C-Dot, can you hear me? I think, Mark, we can still hear you. I think we've lost C-Dot on his audio.
I'm still here.
Oh, you're here?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I'm here. I can hear you. I couldn't hear Mark anymore, though.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. Didn't you start doing some sportscasting when you were still in high school in Kansas City?
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
Didn't you start as a high schooler doing some sportscasting when you were?
Yeah. So basically, I guess, long story short, so I went to Missouri Southern State in Joplin, Missouri, and I sent an email to 610 and 810, and 610 replied. And I'll never forget, I had a job interview while I was watching Around the Horn. and they emailed me back and said that I could start interning. So I came up there and I met Nick Wright, and I just kind of been moving up the ladder, so to speak, ever since.
No, you do a great job. I want to talk to you about this documentary, From Paseo to Pembroke, which just debuted. I understand the Screenland has been full for almost every showing. I know Paul Blackman on our board has seen it. I have not had a chance to see it. He just raved about it. Tell us how this came to be.
So I had this idea back in 2019, and sometimes you just have an idea and you don't really do anything with it. And then last year, whenever COVID happened, I just had a whole lot of free time, like I wasn't watching sports at night. All I was doing was basically watching Netflix and movies. And I realized I had most of the equipment to do it. And I knew some people that had kind of shot movies or edited movies. So I just was like, let's do it. And I remember I sat down one day and I went through my phone and I wrote down every number of somebody that I thought could be in the story or would make sense for the story. And I realized like how many people that I either knew or somebody like Jared Sutton that like knew somebody that, was like, hey, Jared, can you help me get so-and-so to do this? And honestly, at first, I didn't really have like a clear direction. Like I didn't really know what it was about. I'd never done anything like this before. So we just started kind of interviewing people. And I don't know how many of you know what happened with Chris Lindley, but I remember when I heard the story to Chris Lindley, it was kind of one of those like aha moments. Like I realized, there was something here, like there was a movie here. So I knew I wanted it to start with Peeler just because I think Peeler's like really important. And I knew that it sort of had to end with Jerron. Like you kind of have to narrow it down to some extent of, what it is. So I knew there was a beginning. I knew there was an end, but I didn't really know sort of, the in between. So that's kind of what happened. And just getting people around me that kind of knew what they were doing. And, I had this idea, but I didn't really fully know how to execute it all the way. So I know I'm the one that's going to get a lot of the credit for it, but it was a team of us, it was honestly, most of the stuff that people saw was shot with me and 5 other people. So I'm really proud of what we did. I'm really happy that people seem to like it. It's kind of been crazy. So today they actually moved Venom out of a theater to put our movie in because our movie had done better the last 3 days than Venom. So it's just, what I mean? Like I didn't really think anything like that was possible. So it's been really cool to see the support that people have had for it.
From what I read and seen the trailer and everything, it really takes us back to a time when the high school basketball team was the most important rather than the AAU. Things have changed a lot since that era, and that really was a golden era for Kansas City high school basketball.
Yeah, it was. Oh, hold on. I pressed the button by accident. My bad. I really wanted to show sort of the passion that people had for Friday. And honestly, I guess 2 things kind of got me going was watching The Last Dance and seeing how like comprehensive it was. And, everybody that's essential to the story basically is in The Last Dance. So I just thought that was really cool. And I kind of feel like Jerron's story is like the prototypical documentary. It's like the rise and fall. And I hadn't really seen a documentary or heard of one that kind of was like a timestamp piece, like that really defined the era of, where we live. And over the process of doing it, I really started to understand, the pride that people have for their community. Like I didn't really know a whole lot about Liberty. I grew up on 75th and then we moved a little further south. Liberty was, it felt like Liberty was in like another state from where I lived. So, I didn't know anything about that team. So learning about them over the course of, the last, year or so, or learning about Chris Lindley's story. I think it's a story about community. I think it's a story about the pride that people take about where they're from too.
I read that you did like 50 interviews. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's 53 people in the documentary.
Couple of names, of course, familiar, near and dear to Tiger fans, Anthony Peeler, Javon Crudup, and I think you did interview, I thought I saw Javon on the trailer. Were you able to talk to Anthony?
No, it was kind of one of those things like everybody said they could get Peeler, and I don't know. It just never came together. I don't really know what happened with Peeler. I would have loved for him to have been in it. I would say there were like a couple of like really cool moments in the doc that, I'm not a real excitable person, but I got really excited because, I felt like we were getting close. When we got like this footage of the 1995 game that I just didn't think people had saw for a really long time, I got really excited. And I looked for Anthony Peeler playing at Paseo for like 6 months. Like I asked so many people, former teammates, like, hey, do you have any VHS? And one of my friends that works at the news talks at a news station basically was like, here, I'll help you. And he sent me like 3 minutes of Anthony Peeler footage. And it was like, honestly, one of the happiest days of my career. I was just like, I was really happy because I honestly had never seen it before. And I mean, I imagine a lot of people either haven't seen it before or just haven't seen it in a really, really long time. So that was actually one of my favorite moments of doing this. I don't know if you guys have had Javon Crudup on here before, but he is one of the most interesting people that I've ever had the opportunity to talk to. He was really cool. It was, I grew up in the city. I grew up a Missouri fan. So, getting to know him more over this process, getting to know Kareem more over this process has just been really cool.
The three principal guys I think are featured are Peeler, Derek Hood, and Jerron Rush. Where are they now?
So Peeler, I don't know where Peeler is, to be completely honest with you. I hear like different stories. He's like in the city, not in the city. I'm not 100% sure where Peeler is. Derek Hood actually lives in Texas, and I spoke to Derek Hood, but we just couldn't, like, he never came in town, so we couldn't, talk to him. So I didn't want to just record it with him like over the phone and then you play it. Like I just didn't really think that was going to work as well in the course of doing it. And something similar kind of happened with Tyronn Lue. And Jerron actually lives in Kansas City. Jerron's been super supportive in this whole process. He was actually one of the first people to do it. So Jerron's been great. Jerron trains kids in the city. I felt like I didn't know if it was going to be possible to get everybody to do it, but I knew that it wouldn't have been possible or it wouldn't have felt legitimate if Jerron and Kareem both didn't do it. Like I feel like they're so important to the story. They're so important to high school basketball that having their blessing, so to speak, like really made it legitimate and really made it feel big. So they were like a big priority from the very, very beginning.
Kareem came and spoke to the club a couple of years ago at the flea market. Does he live in California now? Do you know?
He's off and on here. He's kind of one of those, how like you have people in your life that you just like run into all the time. That's kind of what like Kareem is for me. Like I just randomly see Kareem like 5 or 6 times a year. But like I said, Kareem's been super helpful. He came to one of the screenings. We're actually putting something together on Friday. So we're moving to a theater in Kansas just to kind of expand it because of the success of it. And him and Jerron are going to be there and answer questions after it's over on Friday night. So it's been really cool. Like I said in the very beginning, I didn't really expect it to turn into this. I remember at first I thought about making like a YouTube video. Like I just was like, hey, it's just something to do. And I think over just talking to more people and getting more footage and getting the blessing from Metro Sports, I was like, let's make like an actual movie. So as somebody who loves movies, I take like really great pride in that. And I'm always on this website called IMDb. So it's like basically Wikipedia for movies. So the fact that I like made something that like people can go look up on IMDb is like really cool to me.
Well, I think you have a hit on your hands. And after the showing through this week at the Screenland Armor, where will we be able to watch it?
So right now the plan is we're actually working with Screenland to extend the showing of it because it's gone so well. So it's sold out Thursday, it sold out Friday. It came real close on Saturday. It was like 3 tickets from selling out. It sold out Sunday night, it sold out Monday night. It's already sold out for today. So they, like, I wasn't joking earlier, like they literally moved Venom from the theater that it was in and put it into the theater that we were supposed to be in, and then moved this crowd into the bigger one so we could fill more seats up. Like so many people came yesterday that they canceled a movie and gave the people a refund because there were more people that wanted to see the other movie. So the response has been really cool to all of that. So the plan is to run it through Screenland through the weekend. We're going to do a special screening on Friday at the Fine Arts Theater, which is in Kansas City, just to kind of put it on the Kansas side and do that. And if I had to guess, I mean, you know, every movie theater runs, you know, it ends at some point, you know, and people like, all right, we're ready for the DVD. We're ready to watch it at home. If I had to guess in the next 2 weeks, it'll be up on Amazon Prime and people will be able to watch it there. And we're going to start selling the DVD for it too.
All right, ready for some questions?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead because there's one related to the documentary from Beth Hayden. I saw the documentary last night with my siblings and my dad. We enjoyed it so much. I know you said after the showing it was difficult to get footage from games before Metro Sports started. Do you think you may start getting home videos now from before that time that people see it? And do you think you could end up with an extended cut or some sort of sequel?
I think we're still figuring out what we're going to do for the DVD. If I had to guess, it'll either be an extended cut, so it'll probably be like an extra 20 minutes of stuff on there, or I think what we'll do is we'll put just clips that didn't make it, things that didn't make it, and we'll just put it like, here's, you know, here's bonus features. You know, we got so many Bud Lathrop interviews that didn't get used. Bell Rec League stuff that didn't get used, the William Jewell tournament stuff that didn't get used. One challenge of it was I was really big on keeping it at 90 minutes. You know, we kind of know how people's attention spans are, that I kind of felt like I didn't want anybody to feel like it ran too long. I feel like it's really the right amount of length. I feel like we don't really cover one thing for too long and it kind of moves forward pretty well. I think it's really well paced. So that was a really big thing. I hope we get more home videos. I mean, we recorded with a lot of people, so I mean, there's probably a whole second documentary and just all the stuff that we didn't use, to be completely honest with you about it. Honestly, I'm maybe not as interested more in making a sequel. I really want to do a Myron Piggy documentary. I feel like Myron Piggy has a lot of stories that a lot of people want to hear. And I don't know if he's ever told his story in a, you know, full length kind of way that I'm that really interests me to do it. I don't know. I never thought I would do this. And then, you know, like once you start doing something, you're like, oh, I got a bunch of other ideas. Like I want to make one on 07 MUKU until that's, you know what I mean? Like there's so many now that like, this is fun. I really enjoyed the creative process. It was different. It was challenging. Really made you be patient. I think at least in my job now on the radio, you know, it doesn't really take that long to get things done. You know, you can't really make a movie in, you know, 3 weeks. Like it takes a lot of time, a lot of planning, a lot of like coordination and teamwork that, you know, it was just a good creative exercise.
I don't know how you find time to do it, but I hope you keep doing it because I think you have a talent for it. And that 07 Missouri KU game, there was a book written about it. So I think a movie would be just great.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that's honestly like, you know, I'm really big off like going off passion and what you feel. And I felt really passionate about doing this in the beginning. It was something that I kind of wanted to like give this to the city because I don't think that anybody had done something like this before where they had really chronicled it. And it's been bigger than this couple came out yesterday that, yeah, that this couple came out yesterday that they, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. It said my connection was unstable. This couple came out yesterday that said they graduated from Pembroke in 94. It was this woman that came out on Saturday that said she graduated from Raytown South in 1974, that she, you know, she got there right and she like kept going to games and stuff. So I guess I didn't really see how wide reaching it could potentially be, and how many people feel a connection to the story. And a lot of people have said, I was at that game, or I saw my cousin in the stands, or, my cousin played in this game against this team. So that part's been really cool. And I mean, I've seen it a bunch now because I've been to a lot of these screenings. So it's fun to see what people respond to. Some lines get different reaction from the crowd than other lines. Some game highlights get different reactions. So it's interesting to see it with different groups of people and just kind of see how they respond and interact with it.
Okay, question go back to the Tennessee game from Paul. Another stat Gabe DeArmond shared. Tennessee runners got enough yards before missed tackles to average 3.5 yards per carry. That means they'd made a first down every series, even if it was one-hand touch. Talent or not, why are the Tigers lined up so badly and tackling so badly?
That is an excellent question. It's hard to think that some of it isn't scheme. I just think to myself Missouri's defensive coordinator was a head coach in the NFL. Was a head coach. It's wild to think that you can reach like that level of success at your job and then be so bad at this part of it. You got to be pretty high regarded. People have to think you're a good coach for you to get one of those 32 jobs, And the fact that it's going so bad at Mizzou, it really makes me question the entire NFL process, to be completely honest with you about it.
This was from asking for your comment from Drinkwitz's press conference. Quote, there's no depth chart. There's Tuesday's practice. After Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll figure out who wants to play. He says the team has been communicated to that it's not business as usual. It's kind of like fall camp again. Your comment on that?
I actually hadn't heard that. That's interesting. I mean, I think Gabe wrote this on his after the game. I can't remember if it was after the game or his Monday thoughts whenever I read it, but we've seen a lot of bad Missouri games. That was up there. That was up there with one of the worst games that I can see. And I think it's like really jarring for everybody how bad they lost, because I think Missouri fans are like naturally pessimistic people. I know I'm naturally pessimistic. Like I always assume the worst is going to happen with Missouri. Like it can be 85 degrees and sunny for 6 days in a row. I'm going to think on day 7 that it's going to rain because I cheer for Missouri. And that's just kind of how it is. That I think this was one of the few times that everybody was happy and everybody was on the same page. Like I would say it hasn't really been like that at Mizzou since Michael Porter committed. Like that was when everybody was happy with Mizzou. Like how could you not be? They just signed Porter. They got Jeremiah Tillman to flip. We all were really happy. And then obviously eventually it rained. This is the rainstorm. Like we all were really happy about Drinkwitz. We all were like, give him whatever contract he wants. Don't let him go. And then Tennessee ran for 700 yards against him.
See, Dotte, with that attitude, we're going to make you an honorary member of the club. Right. Change the subject. Thoughts on a downtown baseball stadium and what it could mean to development around Arrowhead for the Chiefs?
I actually think that the Royals are going to move downtown and the Chiefs are going to stay what they are. I don't know if any of you guys have been to New England Stadium, but they have like a thing called like Patriots Plaza. So there is a movie theater in the Patriots parking lot. They have shopping centers in the Patriots parking lot. There's a hotel in their parking lot. That I think what's going to happen is I think the Royals are going to do what American cities do. American cities put their baseball stadium downtown. They put their baseball stadium because it's 81 games and the foot traffic, and you build an entertainment district around it and you keep all of the money. I think that's what's going to end up happening with the Royals. I think the Chiefs will build the new stadium where Kauffman currently is. I think that's going to kind of be the plan for them. It's just, I don't know if there's a better place to put the stadium for the football than where it is. It's the right amount of space. It's kind of far enough away from everything. That's kind of on its own. And you need the parking space. Like the only other place in the city that gives you that much parking space would be on the Kansas side if you did it out by Wyandotte County. Like that's the only place that would give you the room that you need to keep the tailgating culture. I think people can accept the baseball stadium moving downtown. For as much as we act like we love to tailgate, we don't tailgate like that for baseball games. You might grill out, but people bring their bus, their RV, their smoker. People travel great distance to eat outside at Chiefs games. The one thing that they can't do is disrupt that. And there's just not a lot of places in the city that give you the freedom to do that. So I think they're going to keep the stadium where it is, the football stadium. And I think the Royals are going to move downtown. I also think you don't spend $1 billion on the Royals without either a plan to get a new stadium or you got a amazing television idea in mind. That's how you make the money back on your investment. Like think about the Clippers whenever Steve Ballmer bought them a couple of years ago from Donald Sterling. He bought the Great Western Forum. So they're moving out of Staples and they're moving to where the Great Western Forum is. And they signed a new television deal a year later. Like if you're going to spend $1 billion in cash to acquire an asset, you're doing it for a return. The return is getting the city to pay for the stadium, you owning the stadium, and, you taxing people for it, basically.
I really hope the Royals do move downtown. I've visited probably 22 of the 30 major league ballparks, and I'm a big fan of downtown baseball. And I think you're right. The Chiefs will stay where they are, but I really would like to see a downtown stadium. It's just a different feel, and there's a lot to do before and after the game, which we really don't have right now. I love Kaufman.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we all feel the same way about Kaufman. I love Kansas City with all my heart. Sometimes I feel like Kansas City still wants it to be 1993. That, we need the light rail. That's part of being a modern city. The airport needs to be expanded. Like if you've been to KCI Airport, don't go hungry because you're going to be hungry until you get to wherever your destination is. Like these are just some of the things to becoming a more modern city. And when it comes to the downtown stadium, I don't know how you can go to Coors Field in Denver and not want that in Kansas City. Like if you've ever been there before, it is so cool. It's right downtown. I mean, right when you leave the baseball stadium, there's like clubs and bars right there that it's just a really lively entertainment district. And the Royals, it's just, you leave the game and you go home. That, sometimes you still want to go out. You want to have a drink. You want to, have some fun. That the Royals or the Chiefs, whoever it is, they have not done that since 1973 when they built the Truman Sports Complex.
Next question. What is your impression of Missouri's new athletic director, Desiree Reed-Francois?
I've been trying to get her on the show. I actually was really, really disappointed that they lost Stirk. Stirk was my guy. Like I felt like, and maybe he doesn't care about this, the guy that asked him the question, but him and Nick, if I ever needed Jim Stirk to come on the show, it was just one phone call away and I could get him on the show. I don't know Desiree like this, so I gotta develop that connection. I haven't spoken to her yet. I haven't got the opportunity to. She seems like she can raise money, which I think is the number one thing you need to be able to do. I am curious about her relationship with Konzo Martin. And if you got to make a difficult decision with Konzo, are you going to be able to separate your personal feelings towards Konzo versus what's best for the program? I don't think Konzo's been bad. I don't want it to be communicated that I feel that. I did think there was going to be more, though. When you look at how he recruited at Tennessee and how he recruited at California, I thought there was going to be another level than where they are right now. I thought there was a chance that they could become basically what Iowa State was a few years ago when they had Hoiberg. Like they weren't a team that could win the national championship, but they could be the 4 seed. They could compete to win the Big 12. They played like a fun, entertaining brand of basketball. I kind of thought that they had a chance to be that. I really question what the ceiling is with Konzo Martin as the head coach. Is their ceiling being an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament? Like that's not bad, but I think we all feel like given the talent that exists in Kansas City, the talent that exists in St. Louis, and the talent that exists in Chicago, there's no reason why Missouri can't be Wisconsin in basketball, why they can't be Texas Tech in basketball, that it just comes to finding the right coach. And I thought Konzo had the chance to do that, and I haven't given up hope yet. But that's going to be my biggest question with the AD. Whenever it comes to Eli Drinkwitz, it's just move out of the way. Like the way he's recruiting right now, just give him the support that he needs, and let's see what happens in 2 to 3 years. But that's my question. That's my concern when it comes to Cuonzo Martin and the new athletic director.
Leads into our last question. What are your expectations for the upcoming Mizzou basketball season?
I don't mean to dance out of this question. I don't know how anybody can know when it comes to this year's basketball team. Like, I don't know how Missouri could make the tournament this year. They could be the worst team in the SEC this year. Like, it's such a wide range of what they can be. From, I think, what we know about them, they're going to struggle to shoot again, which it's really hard to win games 69, 67 with the way basketball is played today. And I think that was one of the questions for Cuonzo when he first took the job was, can he develop into a more modern style of basketball with the spacing and cutting and shooting that I think you see today? So I don't mean to not answer the question, but I mean, it's so many new parts and so many new pieces with the team. I think they're going to struggle early. Like, their non-conference schedule is difficult, like really, really tough. So I think it's going to be rough out of the gates. Cuonzo is going to be good enough where they're not going to be terrible, but I think they have a relatively low ceiling this year. I'll put it at about now with what we know between like 12 to 14 games, I think is probably a realistic expectation for this team.
Okay. I'm going to ask you one last question. MLB playoffs start today. Who's your pick?
I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't even been kind of watching baseball these last couple of weeks. It's like, I know what's happening. I know who's playing. The last 3 weeks for me have been some of the busiest, so like finishing the documentary. So for those of you who have seen it, some of that stuff we just got like 2 weeks ago. Like, there's this one part in there about Chris Lindley, some of the footage we just got. And just like really fine tuning that, and football season getting started and finishing it and going to all these screenings. So if it's not the Royals or the Chiefs or just general NFL, I have not been keeping up with it that much lately.
All right. Well, I appreciate your honest answer. Thanks. So that's okay. I know you've been extremely busy, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And we hope we can get to see you in person next time. Yeah,
of course. I am never too busy to join the Tiger Club. I don't care what's going on. If you guys tell me to come on there, Jared hit me up and said, well, they want you to do Tiger Club. And I was like, I will make the time to do it.
Well, you need to become a member. You can watch these live every week when you have nothing to do. So
I always click on them on the Power Mizzou thing. Like, I really am on Power Mizzou. I tell Gabe this all the time. I just went on his thing last week. I go on the Power Mizzou thing. I see all the stuff. Like, that's, one of my favorite websites. I go on there all the time. Like, I think Cowherd says this, that everybody has like a passion that they can't talk about on their radio show or they can't write a newspaper article about. Like, it's just, you like it. Like, I really like the NBA. We don't spend any time talking about the NBA, but I just really enjoy it. I really keep up with MU recruiting. Like, I can tell you who they're targeting. I keep up with who's coming up on the official visits. Like, I really keep up with it. So I see you guys staying on there all the time. I always click on it and watch some of it.
Well, we appreciate your support, and we know you're always your heart belongs as a Tiger fan. So, we love listening to you. So, Kansas City is really blessed to have great sports talk radio. I think we have some really talented people, and you're one of the best.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me. I just want to tell you guys, if you haven't, come out and support from Paseo to Pembroke. I think you guys will enjoy it. I don't say that just because it's mine. I think it's I actually think it's really good. I actually think it's really good.
A handful of people I know have seen it, and all have said great things. And it looks like I think you've got a hit on your hand. So he's Carrington Harrison, host of The Drive on 610 Sports, again, every day from 2 to 6, and on Twitter at C.Harrison. C. Thank you again. And we hope to see you in person down the line.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, folks, that's it for today. Again, make sure you go to our website at kctigerclub.com. Follow us on Twitter at kctigerclub. And we've got some great guests coming up in the next few weeks. Vahe Gregorian from the Kansas City Star. And then in 2 weeks, Cuonzo Martin. And then the week after that, women's basketball coach Robin Pinchton. So we got a great lineup of speakers, and we had one great one today in Carrington Harrison. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you. And thanks for putting up with my technical challenges today. We'll see you a week from today with Vahe Gregorian.